Welcome to Land Administration S'mores, where complex land issues meet campfire clarity. My name is Jack McKenna. I'm a geospatial consultant and land administration subject matter expert. Today's discussion is judicial overreach under the Australian Torrens system. The Torrens system, pillars of judicial overreach and global misapplication. Again, this is Jack McKenna, email address jack_McKenna@landdataplus.com. The St. Lucia Land Statute substituted by the Australian Torrens doctrine and its unintended global consequences, or maybe they were intended, and it led to a land grabbing debacle. The Privy Council judgment that betrayed justice, the book on Amazon.com. This presentation is based on the judicial overreach by the Privy Council judgment in the published book, The Privy Council Judgment That Betrayed Justice. It details how imported Torrens doctrine substituted the statutory provisions of the St. Lucia Land Registration Act, the LRA. The case reference is 2023 UKPC 43. What is judicial overreach? This happens when courts stop interpreting law and start rewriting it. This undermines the rule of law by replacing statutes with whatever foreign doctrine that judges might prefer. When courts substitute their own doctrine for Parliament's legislation, they step beyond their lawful authority. Judicial overreach. The Torrens mirror principle. The Privy Council judgment applied the Torrens mirror doctrine and ignored the St. Lucia Land Registration Act, the LRA. Torrens said, register as a title, listed owner equals lawful owner. The LRA says, no, title remains subject to overriding interests. This substitution rewrote the law and distorted ownership boundaries and rights through imported Australian Torrens principles. Judicial overreach. The Torrens curtain principle. The Privy Council judgment applied the Torrens curtain principle in order to disregard unregistered rights behind the register. Torrens said, the register is conclusive. No need to look behind it. The LRA says it recognizes overriding and equitable interests that exist even if they're unregistered. By enforcing the Torrens curtain, the judgment unlawfully drew the curtain over statutory rights the St. Lucia Land Registration Act was enacted to protect. Judicial overreach. The Torrens indefeasibility principle. The Privy Council judgment applied the Torrens indefeasibility principle in order to grant absolute protection to the registered proprietor. Torrens said, registered title cannot be challenged, even if it's obtained unlawfully. The LRA said, title is not indefeasible. It remains subject to overriding interests and statutory exceptions. By importing Torrens indefeasibility, the judgment overrode Parliament's intent and erased lawful unregistered rights. Judicial overreach. The Torrens clean slate principle. The Privy Council judgment applied the Torrens clean slate principle in order to treat registration as wiping away prior rights. Torrens said, new registration creates a clean slate, erasing past interests. The LRA says, registration records existing rights. It does not extinguish them. By invoking a Torrens clean slate, the judgment unlawfully cancelled vested and overriding interests preserved by the Land Registration Act. The global misapplication of Torrens principles. Courts have imported Torrens doctrines into countries without statutory basis. Torrens wrongly overrides local statutes and leads to wrongful dispossession of land, a land grabber. Torrens judicial substitution undermines legislative frameworks. Torrens is particularly harmful in hybrid or deed-based systems. Judicial overreach by Torrens. The law of overriding interest is ignored. The law is ignored, and the law of overriding interest is just ripped apart. The threat to property rights. Overriding interest is a cornerstone protection in land law. When courts discard it, they erase legal protections for property owners. This leaves lawful owners vulnerable to dispossession despite clear statutory safeguards. This is not an interpretation. When courts substitute statutes with doctrines like Torrens without legislative backing, they move from lawful interpretation to unlawful imposition. This is judicial overreach, not adjudication. The consequences of judicial overreach. It's a violation of the separation of powers. It's an erosion of property rights. It undermines public trust in the judiciary. It replaces the rule of law with judicial activism. The Torrens Doctrine, a tool for land rights deprivation. Ignore the law and cancel the land, all stripped by Torrens. A call to defend the rule of law. Judicial overreach is not merely a legal error, it is a fundamental breach of justice. Laws made by Parliament must be upheld, not replaced by judicial preference. Protect the integrity of law, defend property rights, uphold justice. Conclusion. Judicial overreach replaces enacted law when imported Australian doctrine is applied. Torrens principles have been applied in St. Lucia without statutory basis. Overriding interest protections have been diminished or totally ignored. Property rights and the rule of law have been diminished or totally ignored. Parliament's law, not judicial preference, must prevail. Thank you for your time and attention. Again, this is Jack McKenna, email address jack_McKenna@landdataplus.com.